Hello and welcome to my video about the push and pull, pleasure and pain of the Manifestor-Projector relationship. So this is a bit of an experiment on my behalf. By request, I was asked to speak on this topic, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I didn't really have the energy to blog about it. I found that over time with blogging, it was taking a lot of energy. And recently I've been just playing around a little bit with PowerPoint and slides, and I figured this would be an amazing opportunity to create a little slideshow and talk about something that I'm personally passionate about. So here's to experimentation, and I trust that whoever is meant to watch this video will tune in. So I guess the very first thing to talk about is this image here on the cover slide, where you can see the human design mandala and these batteries. It's like an image of attraction and repulsion. And while this can exist between, virtually any human design types, I find that there is a particular embodiment of this with the Manifestor-Projector relationship. There's a particular thing in terms of attraction, repulsion in its many forms. And that's really why I wanted to give this the title that I did, because from personal experience, I definitely, more than with any other type, I'm a projector. And I have noticed that there can often be this very tangible push and pull. There can also be very tangible pleasure and pain, depending on how the relationship, how the dynamic is being navigated. So yes, it's entirely possible that if you're watching this and as you're following along, that you may also notice some trends with other types in your life. And that's okay too. I always say, take what resonates and leave the rest. This is by no means meant to be an exhaustive presentation. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I did put together some slides, but due to the way that I'm configured, the best is, the magic happens when I just allow whatever is meant to be pulled out of me to be pulled out of me. So with that, the first question to ask here is, well, who am I? So those of you who don't know me, my name is Melanie Halpert, and I'm a 5-1 left angle cross of wishes, quadrite splenic projector. So I do realize that there are some people watching this that may have no clue what that means. And if that applies to you, then it's all good. It's not really going to change your life. But for those of you who are familiar with human design, then that is something that may very well hold meaning for you and may either encourage you or discourage you from watching this further. Just further into my own background, I have been working for 2 decades in the field of holistic health, something that I came to by means of my own struggles and challenges with chronic symptoms that seem to be a mystery to the traditional Western medical field. I am grateful to traditional Western medicine. I have been helped in many ways by it, but I also do realize that there can be limitations. And I'm really thankful that I was drawn to seek out other methods of healing, not only for my own personal healing journey, but in the end, it's what led me to a very, very important and beautiful aspect of my career. So since 2008, I've actually had my own private practice with a focus on healing. And people come to me for all kinds of things, for pain. A lot of people come to see me for pain, chronic pain, acute pain, mysterious pain, stubborn pain. They come to see me for all kinds of mental or emotional dilemmas. And a lot of people come to me for guidance on their life path. And so what's kind of interesting when you get into human design is you start to learn what it is that you are, well, for me anyways, as a projector, what I'm designed to be recognized for. And what's really interesting is that for me, when recognized and invited, I really am here to lead people towards a safe future through oftentimes modifying their behavior for survival. And one of the big things about human design is aligning to your own personal law of gravity, your strategy and authority. And ultimately, as you discover and align to strategy and authority, oftentimes it shifts the way that you've been behaving in life and may very well help to ease the resistance you've been facing, and can also possibly lead you to a safer future in this vast unknown. And especially now with this very major global cycle coming to an end in the next 6 years in 2027, I have a feeling anyways that human design will be kind of on the cutting edge of helping people to be able to navigate a lot of the uncertainty, a lot of the unknown, being able to tune into their own truth, taking their authority back into their own hands, and learning, through respecting the mechanics of their own design, how to navigate this reality with a lot more ease. So, yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. In 2010 is when I stumbled upon human design for the first time. But it was only 7 years later, in 2017, that I started to, it really came to get me, and the way that it drew me in. I was really called into it, invited back into it with intensity, and it's been it's been an amazing journey. What can I say? I honestly was very resistant towards official education, following a traditional official path of education, but things just unfolded in a way that I actually became a certified Living Your Design guide, and am currently in human design analyst training. So I am a student analyst. And in terms of my own experiment with living my design, I guess you could say I'm halfway through my first deconditioning cycle. So human design, the science of differentiation, is really all about understanding what it is that makes you unique and how we are truly homogenized. We live in this very homogenized world, a homogenized society that is always putting pressure on us and hijacking us away from who we truly are, which, in addition to creating a lot of resistance, it also leads to a lack of fulfillment in many ways. So just as it takes approximately 7 years for all of the cells of the body to die and regenerate, as you day by day practice and experiment living as yourself, by the end of 7 years, you truly are a different person. And this different person is much closer to who you truly are than when you began. Certainly, if you're somebody who has already been living on this planet for many, many, many years, being conditioned by the forces around you. Unlike children, a lot of children these days who have amazing parents who are actually raising them according to their design. So it's a lot easier to be raised according to your design and getting to live out who you really are from the get-go. So because a deconditioning cycle is 7 years, this place that I'm at, so I'm between 3.5 and 4 years right now, they say that it's a major turning point. So I am, obviously pretty new still in the grand scheme of things to human design. There are people that have been working with this since the late 80s, the early 90s. So I do not at all consider myself to be an expert, but at the same time, I also understand that there are people that are meant to be drawn to me, that are meant to hear what I have to say. So it's not about reaching everybody. It's not about proving that I'm an expert about this, that, or the other thing. It's just about trusting that the right people are going to find me and get whatever it is that they need from our interactions. As for this topic, again, I am not the be-all, end-all expert about the manifestor-projector relationship, but I do have a lot of experience with it, and I do also have much to share about it by request. So I guess the broadest experience that I have is that I've been in a relationship with a manifestor, so a 2-4 ego manifestor with split emotional authority, for those of you who know what that is, for 12 years. And really interestingly, this has spanned from my Saturn return to my upcoming Uranus opposition, which some of you know are major life cycles. So this has been an extraordinary opportunity to cultivate wisdom, not only about my own mechanics, but also mechanics between myself as a projector, my partner as a manifestor, and many different things. But of course, you know, after 12 years, there are certain things that I have been able to observe and quantify. And that will definitely weave into my sharing. And here, it's a little bit, you know, tongue in cheek here, but at the same time, somewhat serious. I wrote, though perhaps a glutton for punishment, I tend to be attracted to manifestor energy more than any other type. And this whole glutton for punishment, well, it all ties into the whole push and pull, pleasure and pain. When it works, it really works, but when it doesn't, it could be really painful. And in my design, you can see, those of you who have been working with this a little bit can understand that sometimes all it takes is just one activation and you would be another type. And so for me, even though there is one channel, one gate that would make me a generator, a sacral generator, there's also one gate that would make me technically a splenic manifestor, or an ego manifestor with splenic authority. And very interestingly, even though I was born into a family of generators, my mother and father are both generators, my sister is a generator, I have very, very much been attracted, especially to that gate 21. And I have a lot of 45 21s in my life. And I have other manifestors in my life as well, but I noticed that there is a kind of a specific attraction to the 45 21, which, for those of you who know a little bit about human design relationships, for me, it's a compromise channel. Sometimes it works beautifully, and sometimes it can really feel awful. I do have many special manifestors in my life. I've experienced a broad range of context, from romantic connection to deep soul level love, to casual friendship, to professional relationships as well. So whether it be colleagues, my classmates, or also clients of mine in my healing practice. And through those relationships, I've been really learning the insanely huge difference between correct and incorrect interaction. The pain that is possible, but also the magic when the two types are aligned individually and within the dynamic. There's typically so much emphasis on the projector-generator relationship that healthy interfacing between projectors and manifestors can often get overlooked. So it is a big deal. Projectors and generators, projectors and manifesting generators as well. There is a natural kind of complementary partnership between those two. But speaking for myself and also other projectors that I know, they seem to have more manifestors in their life, or they just have this extensive experience with manifestors, more so even than with generators. And I've noticed that I've spent so much time with manifestors that I struggle sometimes, even I tend to communicate better, or I'm learning to communicate better with manifestors than I have been with with generators and manifesting generators. So anyways, I do trust that those who are drawn to watch this video will get whatever it is that they need. So one of the first things that I feel is worth talking about, it definitely is more of a generalization than having to do specifically with projectors and manifestors, but it definitely is worthwhile discussing how much of our perception of someone and what we take personally about them is actually a matter of mechanics and alignment. So for me, this has been something that's been very stark, very tangible, especially with the manifestor. Just really oftentimes misunderstanding. And I think that I could have really avoided a lot of heartache had there been things that I understood. Not that it would have changed other things, but it still would have eased my own inner suffering to understand that a lot of things that I took personally were actually impersonal, and that all of it was a matter of mechanics and alignment. As I continue to live my experiment and honor as best as I can strategy and authority, I notice a deep lessening of these things and a much greater ability to accept somebody for who they are and being able to see it objectively without jumping to conclusions, making it personal, a lot less judgment and a lot more inclusivity. That doesn't mean there's a fine line there, because something too that's just been like a huge lightning bolt is the ability to truly love somebody unconditionally, but at the same time have healthy boundaries. So just because we can see and accept somebody for who they are doesn't mean that that person is correct for us in our life. This has been something that's it's been a very large part of my process. And recently there was in a private Facebook group, there was somebody talking about human design. There was somebody who was confused a little bit about mechanics and was asking, what does it mean when they talk about honoring mechanics? And it's not often that I chime in, but I felt really drawn to write something. And then in retrospect, as I was creating this presentation, I thought, this would be a really great thing to include. And so for me, my way of describing it is, I said, honoring mechanics is like honoring your own personal law of gravity and understanding the way that law of gravity meets the world. For me anyways, above and beyond strategy and authority, understanding the way my aura operates and aligning to the role of my profile has been revolutionary. When we're able to appreciate everything as mechanics, it allows us to stop taking things personally and to course correct, not only in our overall approach to life, but in our relationships as well, so that we experience ease and flow rather than resistance. So with that, this kind of first part here that I wanted to explore is in some ways very basic. So if you have been in human design for a while, some of the things that we're going to talk about next are, at the end of the day, pretty basic. But at the same time, I would say maybe the most important and most profound when it comes to really being able to see why certain things work and why certain things don't. And it's very much tied into auric interaction between types, the respective roles and chemistries of manifestors and projectors. So what you see here is a little kind of example here, a drawing of a manifestor. Everything on these slides related to manifestor is going to be in orange. And then the projector here, everything related to the projector is going to be in green. And when we talk about aura in human design, it's really not at all used in the same context as, say, the spiritual or new age communities. in human design, when we talk about aura, this is really about one's chemistry. And it's something that is exuded, that goes beyond your mood, it goes beyond your level of consciousness, it goes beyond whether you're a good person or a bad person, or an introvert or an extrovert, or any of these polarities that you could come up with. It really is inbuilt, you know, like totally inbuilt, unchanging. It is what is exuded from you and plays a huge role in why you're here. You know, what is your purpose? What is your role in many ways? And so the manifestor aura, it is a closed and repelling aura. So remember, talking about this push and pull, pleasure and pain, the manifestor aura by its very nature is meant to push things away. Why is that? Is it because they're antisocial, mean people? Well, they might be, but no, it has nothing to do with that. The manifestor is here to have impact. And it's through that aura that pushes things away. And in fact, when another type is in the presence of a manifestor, their aura will shrink back, because the manifestor is here to have impact. And it's through their impact that they innovate. They're here to get things started, to spark things. They are the only type. And I mean, the manifestors make up only about 10% of the population. They are the only type who are designed to initiate. They are the only type that does not need to wait for anything outside of themselves to do. They don't. They have that power. And on the other hand, we've got the projector, who has a very focused and absorbing aura. And as you can see, it's almost like a cone shape. And it's because the projector is really here, not for themselves, like the generator or the manifesting generator. The projector is here to know the other, because they're here to guide and advise. So this kind of pointy aura is made to hone in and lock onto the identity center of the other in order to know their overall frequency. By its very nature, it is probing. So you can see right off the bat that we've got this one being that is, just by its very nature, its auric energy is always pushing things away, pushing things back. And then the projector is probing into things. And so looking now to some of the other essential factors between these two types, we've got what is truly most important, which is vastly different to these two types. The most precious thing to a manifestor is having freedom of movement. The freedom to be able to do as it pleases, when it pleases, how it pleases. And they say a manifestor child is born and the parents go, oh no, because they can feel this little being is powerful. And they're so powerful that the tendency of the parent, of the manifestor child, will be to try to control it. So this is a deep wound of the manifestor. They have this deep fear of being controlled, being punished, being blocked from what it is that they want to do. So what ends up happening, built in, we're talking about aura, built into the aura of the manifestor through different channels that make up a manifestor's design, is the chemistry of anger. So this is what will arise in a manifestor when they feel that their freedom of movement is being blocked. Ultimately, they are here to experience the signature of peace. And peace could be, there's so many different ways that peace is described by the collective, but Peace for a manifestor is not necessarily sitting in lotus position on the top of a mountain in the middle of Tibet and nobody's around them. I mean, yeah, it could be that, but it is not really about that. It is this peace that exists when they have that freedom of movement. Nobody stopping them, nobody getting in their way, able to be in this flow of doing as they please, unimpeded. It's the most precious thing. It really is the most precious thing for a manifestor. And for a projector, the most precious thing for a projector is tied into recognition, being recognized, and also the joy of recognizing the other. And just as the Manifestor Aura has this built-in anger when it does not have that freedom of movement, the projector aura contains bitterness. And so when the recognition isn't there, when they haven't been invited in by the other, they can get very, very bitter. And I think it was a quote by Ra where he said, when the projector stops hunting for the sweet, that's when they find themselves. So one of the ways in which we projectors can shoot ourselves in the foot is that we are so busy looking for that sweetness that we actually push it away as well. So both the manifestor and the projector have their own issues that can really contribute to that push-pull. And even looking at things from like a psychology background or something, some of you have maybe heard of the terms anxious attached, anxious avoidant. So the manifestor would be classically labeled as the anxious avoidant and the projector as the anxious attached. So, I mean, I'm not one to, I'm not here to label things in that way. It's just that sometimes people can be labeled those ways, but a lot of it, if they actually understood the mechanics, they wouldn't need those labels and they would be able to start operating in ways that would allow them to live as themselves and to live in harmony between them while respecting their individual nature. Each of the types has an existential question, and they also have, I guess you could say, a very specific fear. The manifestor, they're all about impact. They are here to have impact. They are here to know how they impact. So their existential question is really, how do I impact others? Through their initiation, how do they impact others? And the biggest fear, this is something that has taken me quite a while to understand, but I'm finally seeing it. I finally get it. This fear, will I be answered? And we're going to get to this a little bit further in the presentation in terms of some of the issues that manifestors can deal with. But it's like everybody else has this envy of the manifestor, like they can do anything. And like all the other types have this thing like, oh, I wish I could be a manifestor, but they don't realize the manifestor has their own issues. And it's not always, you know, the grass is always greener. It's not always easy to be a manifestor. And because most of them have been conditioned to not be who they are, conditioned to wait to respond when they're really not here to wait to respond. They are here to initiate. This will I be answered, there can oftentimes be fear that if they do kind of cast that line out, if they do throw that ball, hit the ball into the other court, that it's going to go flat, that they won't be answered, that they'll be rejected. In fact, it's a big thing. Whereas with the projector, yeah, really not here to know ourselves. Yes, we're here to know what we're designed to be recognized for, but our whole gift is about knowing the other. And the big fear for the projector is, will I be noticed? Will I be noticed? Feeling invisible, feeling like something needs to be done in order to be seen by the other, in order to be recognized by the other. So in terms of strategy, the manifestor who's designed to initiate, before they initiate, they are really supposed to be aware of who their action is going to affect, and just let them know before they either do or don't do that thing. And it's through that all of the resistance is eased up. And it can be really difficult for a manifestor because it's not the type of thing that you can tell a manifestor to do, because they're so terrified of being controlled. Even attempting to talk to a manifestor, and especially for a projector who has not been recognized and invited, trying to tell them to follow their strategy and authority, I mean, it's a losing battle. It is something that is never going to work. I would not recommend it unless you really are a total masochist. And so the projector is not designed to initiate. The projector is designed to wait for recognition and invitation before proceeding with anything, not just with the manifestor, with any type, but especially with the manifestor, because there's like really no leeway. I find that there's really no leeway, especially with a manifestor that you've never met, that it is always best practice for a projector to just hang back. You know, if that manifestor is meant to recognize you, they will. You got to trust in your aura and not worry about the manifestors who don't. So aurically, I mean, there are definitely big challenges between these two types. If the manifestor does not recognize and invite the projector on any level, the projector's energy might feel intrusive to the manifestor. So remember, there's like that pointy energy that hones in and locks onto the identity center of the other. And if the manifestor isn't in the space for that, I mean, either overall in general with that person, or it could even be that day or for a certain time, they're just not going to be able to stand that feeling of being probed. So it can feel, even if the projector isn't saying anything, even psychically, I find that it can have this effect where there's this like feeling that the projector is saying, let me in, let me in, let me in, kind of wanting to bust through that shell, where the manifestor just wants to be left in peace. And then on the other hand, if the projector is not recognized and invited by the manifestor's energy might feel really harsh to the projector. So yes, the projector wants so badly to be recognized by the manifestor. It may not even have anything to do with the manifestor not recognizing the projector, but if they're not in that space, if they're busy doing something else, it could feel very almost harsh, cold, rejecting to the projector. So the projector ends up taking it personally, thinking that the manifestor hates them. You know, there could be all kinds of stories that are invented. So it could really work, you know, both ways for this push-pull. It could be self-generated and inflicted, or it could be just as a result of awkward interfacing between the two types. But there is a bottom line, because there is, whether we like it or not, there is a hierarchy. As Ross said, there is no end to hierarchies. And even though manifestors are only about 10% of the population, projectors now, I think about 21% of the population, the manifestors are still kind of at the top of the proverbial food chain. Is it because they're better than the projector? No, it's just that energetically they have certain power that the projector does not have on their own. And so if a manifestor does not sincerely recognize and invite a projector into their life of their own accord and volition on whatever level it's never going to work, because this is something that cannot be forced. Take my word for it, it cannot be forced. And it's really essential for projectors to remember that there are certain things that absolutely require a formal invitation. So obviously you don't need an invitation to choose what you're going to eat or whatever clothes you're going to wear, but there are 4 things. So first and foremost, who to bond with. So this could be socially, this could be professionally, who to love. So definitely in a romantic context. And this could be very difficult. I mean, this could be very difficult for both manifestors and projectors, especially because of a lot of the kind of heteronormative and like gender-based roles that we've been really homogenized into. So, I mean, just looking at things from from a very heteronormative standpoint, a manifestor woman has probably been raised to wait for somebody to make a move on her or ask her out. Whereas a projector man has probably been raised to go out there, be confident, make it happen, take what's yours, all of that. And it's like, it does not work. And especially in a love relationship between a manifestor and a projector, the manifestor absolutely has to recognize and invite the projector into their life. The manifestor has to let that projector know how they feel about them, which takes courage. It does take courage because the manifestor is oftentimes afraid of being rejected. But for them to let that projector know how they feel and that they would like to, whatever, bond with them in whatever way, ask them out, whatever it is. But even in terms of friendship, like there's certain things that the manifestor needs to make that first move. And it could be very difficult and it could be very awkward when it happens the other way around. When a projector tries that with a manifestor, it often leads to heartache. And so for projectors as well, being invited into what to study, especially if your projector is a child, having parents who are like, hey, do you want to maybe try this or that? And having that ability to really be invited to explore different things and see what's right for you, what to do for a career, and also where to live. So those are really the 4 essential things for a projector. And so definitely when it comes to the manifestor-projector relationship, just creating that space. And if the manifestor doesn't recognize you and if they don't invite you, well, it means that that person is just not the right person for you. Squeezing a square peg into a round hole is not worth it. It's just not worth it. And so now moving into some type-related issues. So these are some, not all, but some issues that can arise with projectors and manifestors. And so starting first with manifestors, I love manifestors. And I think that, yeah, even though I have definitely felt very misunderstood as a projector, I think that manifestors are deeply, deeply misunderstood. And some of it is as a result of their aura, but there can be, like unbeknownst to a projector, the projector can sometimes really feel like the manifestor is pushing them away. And yet at the same time, the manifestor can be suffering so much because all they want is this connection, this intimacy, but it's kind of like being behind a glass wall or something. I don't know. And I can't speak for manifestors because I'm not a manifestor, but from what I've observed also from manifestors who have opened up to me about their process, I do know that there can be a very big dilemma between connection and solitude, wanting intimacy and also pushing it away, not knowing if people are not approaching them because of whatever reason. And sometimes it's just because they don't even understand that they're the ones that are supposed to be approaching that person. So they don't get it. Sometimes they can just be really in the dark about that. Like, why do people react to me in this way? Could be a big struggle. So there's that. And then there's also being oblivious as to one's impact and impact field. So with impact being really the most important thing for a manifester, they're not here to be like, like a limp noodle or this disempowered lump. No, like you're here to have punch, to have impact. It doesn't have to be necessarily on a worldwide scale, but whether or not you are trying to have impact, it's also important to know that you do. Whether you are completely silent and you walk into a room, completely silent and leave a room, it is felt by everyone. And the most empowering thing that a manifestor can do for oneself is to start to become aware of their impact. And not only their impact, but also their impact field. And this is something that can shift and change. What is an impact field? Well, manifestors are designed to have impact. They're the ones that can initiate and can do. And so whatever a manifestor will do or not do is going to affect other people. So whoever it is that your decision or your action is going to affect, well, that's your impact field. So not every decision is going to affect everyone, but most decisions will involve at least someone. So starting to be able to think about, okay, if I do this, who is it going to impact? And it's not that manifestors don't necessarily think about this, but it's like the way that they think about it. Because instead of it being about how they can, how do I say this? It's more like, who's going to try to stop me from doing this? Who's going to get mad at me for doing this? Instead of understanding, okay, who do I have to let know about this so that I'm not going to have a problem? Because this is the huge, huge advantage for a manifestor who gets wise to the whole point of informing. I mean, it has nothing to do with permission. This is one of the points on the slide, believing that informing means asking permission. But I always get this vision of, I'm not religious by any means, but like Moses parting the Red Sea. And a manifestor is so terrified. It's like so counterintuitive for them to let people know what they're doing because they want to be invisible. It's kind of like an elephant, the elephant in the room, the bull in the china shop. They can tiptoe around and make tons of noise. They don't even know. And so they try to be sneaky. They try to kind of go under the radar. But in doing that, they actually are creating the resistance that they want to eliminate. And it's a shock. It's actually a shock. It can be a huge shock to a manifestor when they experiment with informing how it's almost like waving a magic wand. And speaking from experience, it's night and day. And there is nothing more just precious and beautiful to me than a manifestor showing courtesy towards me by keeping me informed. And when they do that, it's like a delight for me to just totally encourage their freedom of movement. I mean, there's really nothing more. I love supporting a manifestor's freedom of movement. But what makes the difference is when a manifestor actually recognizes their impact on me and considers me as part of their impact field. And they just let me know their intentions. And it's like, voila, waving the magic wand, go for it, do it, be you, be free, do your thing. So kind of becoming aware of one's impact and impact field could be huge. Also understanding the role and the power of courtesy, understanding what informing actually does for them, and that it has nothing to do with asking for permission. And through experimenting with that informing, understanding that it actually leads to the opposite of being controlled or punished. But manifestors have to come to this on their own. The more that they tiptoe around, do that whole sneaky behavior, trying to grant themselves the peace that they crave, the more that they see, they don't understand why is everybody around me angry? Why are they trying to control me? They're not trying to control you. You just need to let them know what you're going to do before you do it, and they'll let you do it. So the anger that can arise from that can really poison their life. And there are many manifestors that don't necessarily show their anger outwardly, but it literally will poison them inside, feeling, this smoldering. And yet at the same time, that anger is purposeful. It has a purpose. And even in the healthiest manifestor, there's always going to be anger. It's part of their chemistry. But instead of letting it fester, instead of it becoming pathological, they use it in the way that it's designed to be used. So the last few things here have to do with initiating. And something that manifestors learn as they experiment with their design is that there is a huge difference between initiating from the mind and initiating from inner authority. So one of the, basic things, if you run your own chart, you're going to find out what's your strategy, your type, your strategy, your authority. So the manifestor, I think there's 3 authorities. So 50%, roughly 50% of the population are have emotional authority with a defined solar plexus. And that always requires waiting for clarity. And there could be confusion here because manifestors, they don't have to wait. They're the ones that can do without having to wait for anyone else. But there's a huge difference. This is not about waiting for anyone else. This is waiting for emotional clarity to emerge within you over time as to what action to take or not. Then there are splenic manifestors who are truly existential, moment by moment, guided towards what is healthy and safe for them or not. And then lastly, the most rare authority is ego manifested, where the heart center is connected directly to the throat. And this can be, these can be the most screwed up manifestors, but they are also, when they align to their authority, it can be absolutely amazing. It's just tricky because it's the spontaneous will, whatever it is that they will say, that they say spontaneously without it being eclipsed by the mind, what they think they should say, what they want to say. It's really what they do say in the moment, and ultimately what they have the will for, what they want. They're here really to follow their will, to follow their heart. But because of the openness in their design, it can oftentimes get very overshadowed by conditioning, and they end up living somebody else's life. So initiating from correct inner authority rather than initiating from the mind. And as I had mentioned before, because oftentimes manifestors are raised to be generators, instead of initiating, they're sitting around waiting for the other person to initiate. They're waiting to respond to things, which is not at all how their energy operates. They're the ones that need to initiate when, with right timing, from the right place. And again, their fear of rejection, it's so crazy to me because I see manifestors, I see this power within them. And it's humbling sometimes to just see how terrified they can be sometimes of not being answered, of being rejected. And if only they didn't let that break their stride, just like with a projector. If a manifestor doesn't recognize and invite you, well, they're not for you. And it's the same thing for a manifestor. If you initiate with someone and you do get rejected, well, that's just not the right person for you either. But it certainly shouldn't hijack you away from living out the beauty of your design. So this is just a little quote from me. where, I mean, this is my truth. There's truly nothing more attractive than a manifester who is aware of their impact, considerate of their impact field, who informs before they act and initiates from their inner authority with confidence. So I find that really, really attractive. I find it maybe one of the most attractive things that I've ever witnessed is a manifester who is aligned to their design. And, you know, like living loud and proud. Now, to unpack some projector issues, and don't worry, we've got many too, I would say that because recognition is so important to the projector, that there can, and this can be with any type, but I find especially because the manifestor aura is so dense and so closed and repelling, that there could be this desperation for recognition and attention from the manifestor. Like outside of the realm of human design, and even kind of bringing back in that whole anxious, avoidant, anxious, attached, all of that, it's like, or the chaser, whatever you call it, the runner chaser dynamic and all of that, it's like very much tied into this, that the projector can find it a big challenge to get into the manifestor, and then the manifestor finds it, it's like, even though they may want that closeness, it can be terrifying to them, so they then pull away, and then the projector feels rejected. It just fuels this cycle that is completely unnecessary. So one of the big things here is for projectors to understand that they're really not here to be desperate for recognition from manifestors or from anyone else. Another thing also is expecting recognition from a manifestor to feel like recognition from other types. Look, people may not agree with this, and that is totally okay. You may have your own experience with manifestors where you don't feel as a projector any difference, that recognition is recognition is recognition. And there is definitely a frequency of recognition. When you know what that feels like as a projector, it's, I mean, everything else pales in comparison. However, I'm very sensitive to nuances, and I do feel that there is a vast difference in recognition that will come from especially a generator, another projector, or a reflector compared to a manifestor. It's just different. The way that they're able to, and it's not about them being a good person or a bad person or unable to love or anything like that. It's just by nature of the way that they're made up. And that's not even taking into consideration their profile, which could very much play into it, and their own definition, their channels, the way that they interface with your design. So, you know, like, this is a bit of a general presentation, but I will definitely say that a big downfall for me was expecting recognition, especially from certain manifestors, to feel like recognition from other types. And it's easy also to kind of to find it harder to appreciate in certain ways, because when you have something to compare it to that feels, it's like, what, I wish it could feel that way. Like, I wish I could feel recognized by the manifestors in my life like I do from, you know, this person or this person or this person who's a totally different type. So it can be almost even insulting maybe to a manifestor that it's like their way of loving you, their way of recognizing you isn't good enough for you. This is something that also is something that I have been just sitting with and understanding and appreciating and working with within myself and my relationships. Another thing, obviously, we talked about this before, we're not designed to initiate. So projectors initiating with other types, especially initiating with manifestors. Certainly manifestors you're meeting for the first time can be a big facepalm moment. And definitely, I think that all projectors kind of go through this in their process, is learning the difference between organically orchestrated invitations versus engineering or manipulating invitations. Invitations can definitely be engineered, but the end result is going to show you if that's what it was. And it can be tempting for a projector because we're so penetrating, we're so penetrating, and there is a certain charm. Sometimes there is that deep attraction between a manifestor and a projector, because in many ways too, it's like they've never been seen the way that they are able to be seen by a projector. There could be a deep comfort in that, but there can also be a deep fear. And so a projector who is so desperate for that recognition, that manipulation to get in can feel really uncomfortable to a manifestor, and that's going to definitely guarantee you that they shut down. That's a hard one lesson for me. So it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. If it's really meant to be, it will be, and it will be organically orchestrated, not engineered, not manipulated. Another point, and this was one that I've had fun with recently: thinking one can mentally transcend the mechanics of incorrect interaction. So what does this even mean? Well, and they say, and it's so true, that there is a big discrepancy between studying human design versus living your design. And it's absolutely useless to study human design if you're not living your design. And for the longest time, I thought that if I understood the mechanics of what happened, for example, let's just say there's a not self manifestor in my life, they don't inform me about something, and then it creates anger, and it also creates bitterness, that my understanding of that would allow me to transcend it. Like I wouldn't have to experience it because I understood it mentally. Total lie. It doesn't work. So mechanics are mechanics. The anger is going to come up. The bitterness is probably going to come up. Just because you mentally understand mechanics does not mean that you're going to get a free pass. Projectors can also stay stuck in that. So obviously here we're looking at it from the perspective of projectors relating with manifestors. So when a manifestor doesn't inform the projector, that can create a lot of anger, not like in the projector, and obviously bitterness as well. But there's a huge difference between staying stuck in that and letting it literally shut everything down versus understanding its purpose and using it to help you move on to things that are going to be more fulfilling and more productive use of your skills, your gifts. So this whole thing is that as a projector, you have this aura that is designed to be noticed. And yet staying stuck in anger and bitterness, it shuts it down. So you may be happy stewing about this manifestor who did you wrong and how could they be like this, but you're actually just shooting yourself in the foot. And projectors can also get very disempowered, thinking that, oh, I have to sit here and wait for other people to recognize me and invite me. I'm so powerless, I can't do anything. No, that whole attitude is never going to get you anywhere, because the truth is that when you are not living out a specific invitation, you are preparing for the next invitation. As projectors, we are here to master a system, something that other people will recognize and invite us to guide them about, or to enlighten them about, or to whatever. It's like we have to have our jam, our thing, whatever it is that we're passionate about. So other people can be as asleep as they are, but it doesn't mean that you need to stay stuck and mired in your own shit. You can say, wow, okay, well, this isn't working out right now, so I'm going to just throw myself into what it is that I love and trust that the right people are going to come along, recognize, and invite me. I don't need to worry about this. So that's a really big one. Another thing too is settling for being recognized for the wrong things. So as I had mentioned before, even though as a projector, we are really here to know the other, we also absolutely need to know what we are here to be recognized for. So whether it's with a manifestor or any other type, settling for being recognized for the wrong things is never going to lead to fulfillment. And in many ways, we teach people how to treat us. So when we know what we're designed to be recognized for, we won't settle for anything less, especially as a projector. If somebody's telling you, wow, I love what a hard worker you are, you know that that person is not seeing you for who you are. It has nothing to do with us being lazy, but we're not here for our doing. We're not here for being these 9 to 5 gear grinders. We're here for our seeing. We're here for our being. So depending on what your definition is as a projector, knowing what you're designed to be recognized for, and also recognizing the beings who recognize you for that is definitely a priority. It could be really easy when desperate for recognition and attention to accept crumbs and abusive behavior. And I've noticed that, manifestors love them, but a lot of them in their unawareness and their unwillingness to kind of like deal with their end of the bargain, we can deal with a lot of abusive behavior, unintentionally even. So that's the thing. It's like a lot of this stuff is not intentional, but at the same time, continuing to put yourself in the line of fire is your responsibility. You can't change them. You're not going to change them. So you can only work on your own strategy and authority. And if you keep on, for example, accepting invitations that are not what you're looking for, well, you're the only one that can learn how to say no. So that leads us into a few other issues. And actually, recently, one of the things that had kind of led up to this presentation, it was synchronistic and amazing. I think she's a 6'2" splenic manifestor, another Living Your Design guide, currently living in Mexico, Isis Silver, who did a panel about the manifestor-projector relationship with a couple of projectors. So she had them on and they were talking about things. And I was really impressed because there were some nuances that they discussed that I had also noticed. One of them being this whole trying to guide the manifestor. So as projectors, we learn that our role is to guide and to advise the energy types. And manifestors, they fall into that category of energy type. And yet, it is vastly different, our role with the manifestor, as opposed to with the generator or the manifesting generator, the sacral beings. So those of you who know design understand too that, like a projector, the manifestor does not have sacral definition. And with the generators and the manifesting generators, ultimately, our role is to guide their own awareness of their energy management. Is it efficient or not? How can it be optimized? But with the manifestor, we're not here to guide them. And I think that this is where a lot of things go south, is because the projector, they kind of cross a line. And I know that I have crossed a line so many times with the manifestors in my life, a lot of it before I was really living my design, which now in retrospect, I don't regret. I've learned enormously from it, and I can understand why I seemed maybe abrasive or annoying to the manifestor. I get it. It's like serious lesson learned. But we're not here to guide them. And the difference is that when we, all types, but we'll look at this through the lens of the projector. When the projector is aligned to strategy and authority, we're here to be an outer authority. And for the manifestor, they have this extraordinary potential to recognize and invite our outer authority. But it's not about us guiding them. Very possibly, there may be manifestors that will specifically ask a projector for guidance and invite them in that way. But more often than not, it's difficult because they're just kind of here to do their own thing, carve their own path, have that freedom of movement. But at the same time, they can kind of like really respect and value the outer authority of the projector, and their outer authority can be something useful to them, in the dynamic of their relationship. So that's a big thing. Another thing too that I noticed is just a losing battle, total dead end, is trying to save a manifestor from the consequences of their own actions. It could be really tempting because we see everything. It's like, well, if you just listen to me, your life is going to be so much better. Yeah, shut it. It's like they don't want to hear it. They need to almost slam their head into the wall so many times that they just can't deal with their life anymore as is, that they will then kind of come to you. And maybe if you're lucky, they'll actually listen to what it is that you have to say. As to whether or not they start experimenting with their strategy and authority, that's a whole other thing. But manifestors facing the consequences of their own actions is something that's actually really important to their process. So trying to help them and like minimize that for them is actually doing them a disservice. This is really something that I have kind of witnessed for myself. And I would love it, actually, if there are any manifestors that do watch this, if they've noticed that they've learned best from having to actually face the consequences of their own actions, and if it's something that's empowering for them. In terms of communication between types, manifestors are designed to inform. That's their strategy, inform before acting. But at the same time, it's really important for another type who's involved with a manifestor to keep the manifestor informed. So that's something that can be really annoying to a manifestor is when a projector is asking them questions. Some manifestors don't seem to mind it too much. I've kind of experimented with that, and others loathe it, It repels them. They can't stand it at all. So this informing, it's really powerful when a projector is able to just keep a manifestor informed in a way that allows them to then take action in their own way, in their own time. Because the whole thing is that they don't like to feel constrained. It's very easy for them to feel constrained and suffocated. So just letting them know something, kind of like keeping them posted about something and letting them work it out, is always best practice. Now, the last few things here, this is also something that was discussed in the panel discussion that Isa did, and I loved it. Sorry, I don't know if it's Isa Silver. Is this whole concept of the scope or parameter of an invitation. And first and foremost, I think that a big issue for a projector can be to assume that one has a standing invitation with a manifestor. And again, just kind of in the same way that recognition from a manifestor can feel different than from other types, the whole invitation thing can be different as well. I've noticed that with generators, manifesting generators, other projectors, reflectors, that once this kind of like bond has been established, that usually I don't need to renew, like the invitation doesn't really need to be renewed. Or if it does, it's kind of like, you know, a minor thing. It's not really a big deal. But with manifestors, feeling your in like spin, it's just not like that. I have had experiences in my life where I feel that more so than others, but there are others where it's very apparent to me that the invitation may be for a conversation. The invitation may be for a specific moment in time. And once that conversation ends, or once that activity is over, it's like the invitation is done. It's like a period at the end of a sentence. There needs to be a new capital letter to start the next sentence. It's something that is energetically tangible to me now. And the old me, and this was one of the hugest things in my own learning process with manifestors, is that sometimes I wouldn't understand when an invitation had run its course. And I would keep on going on like it was still on. And I kept on hitting, like it was just full of resistance, and I didn't understand why. And it's because there was a scope and a parameter that I just was not wise to. So this is something that can be very, very helpful for projectors, is to get clear as to the scope or parameter of a specific invitation from a manifestor. Sometimes you're able to discuss it very objectively and know where you stand. Sometimes you're not. So using your signposts, when that bitterness comes up, well, you have a choice. You can either speak to the manifestor and inform them, or, and that's not a guarantee that it's going to work, or you can just get busy going back to doing what you love and trusting that if there's going to be another invitation, it's going to come back in, or somebody else, another invitation, another thing is going to come into your life. And so for the projector, I feel that there is truly nothing more powerful than a projector who knows their worth, who is able to say no, who trusts so fiercely in the chemistry of their aura that waiting for the right invitations becomes a sacred act of self-love. So I truly have learned the pain of incorrect interaction with manifestors. As a left angle being, I also know that there are people that, everybody that I meet, I am designed to encounter them on my path. There is something to be worked out. And what could be really a dilemma, I find, as a left angle being, is that there is this deep remembrance. I've had, especially with manifestors, this deep remembrance. And also, depending on the way that your profile, your designs collide, in terms of not only that attraction and repulsion in the auric sense, but there can be a lot of electromagnetics. There could be a deep, deep draw. And it still doesn't mean that that being is correct for you. So it can be painful. There can be a lot of amazing gifts, and there can also be a lot of pain, a lot of lessons learned. I remember when I was young, I had these books called Choose Your Own Adventure, and you'd get to the end of a chapter and you'd have a choice between, turn to this page or turn to this page. And I find, especially with manifestors for the longest time, that I would always turn to one page and yet almost expect a different ending, or I would choose that same page and not understand why it was always the same. And the clinical definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So I got to the point where I realized that the only way for things to change was for me to change the way that I was. If other people were unable to change, then it had nothing to do with me, and that there were going to be other beings that would be drawn into my life that would lead to fulfilling recognition and invitations. So just to reiterate that no amount of mental understanding can erase the signposts of incorrect interaction between manifestors and projectors. That being said, when respecting mechanics, manifestors and projectors can be a magical team. So, even though the projector is not here to guide the manifestor is here to have impact. They're here to initiate. They're here to get things started. And the projector, even though they may not be guiding the manifestor, maybe they're guiding a process. Maybe the two have this incredible entrepreneurship, and they've got some great generators and manifesting generators working under their innovation and guidance. I mean, there are all kinds of different ways that these two can come together in different contexts, and for it to be a very satisfying, very fulfilling relationship where each person is recognized and appreciated for who they are, what they have to bring. So in terms of fostering peace and success, so peace in the manifestor, success in the projector, and navigating the push-pull. Not that it always has to be attraction, but it also doesn't always have to be repulsion. So finding that balance within oneself, within the dynamic. So for the manifestor to understand their impact, for them to be aware of their shifting impact field. So like, where is that cannonball pointed at? Who, that honking of the horn, who do you need to honk for so that they know just to step out of the way? Appreciating the role and purpose of courtesy. So there is a huge return of investment that becomes possible when you, as a manifestor, are able to show courtesy to the people in your life that your actions impact, and understanding that being courteous, considering them when you do what you do, not asking for the permission, but just being courteous, is something that will come back to you tenfold. Mastering the art of informing before you act. So it's really interesting because I've noticed too here that there's no comparison. The informing must happen before the action is done. If it's after the fact, it doesn't work. So, and this could involve whether it has to be going somewhere, doing something, or leaving somewhere, or not doing something. So for that person to just be in the loop, like, hey, I'm really busy. I've got a ton of stuff going on. I have no idea when I'm going to be able to talk to you next, but I'll be in touch. Something like that, instead of just ghosting the person. So these are things that can really, really, really change the dynamic. And of course, initiating from inner authority and not the mind. For projectors, biggest thing is trusting in the power of your aura, understanding that your energy, your aura, you are designed to be seen and to be recognized by the right people. So when you stop focusing on the wrong people, the right people can come in. You'll have that time to hone your mastery, to hone your craft, and for the right people to come in and ask you for your guidance or to recognize your outer authority. Knowing what healthy recognition feels like. So again, what are you designed to be recognized for? Not settling for being recognized for who you're not. Contentment in waiting for the right invitations. So it could be exciting. I mean, it's so exciting when you have been waiting and waiting and waiting, and then finally that person that you care about or that you were hoping would see you sees you. But it could be a false flag, because then you can find out after you're so embroiled in this invitation that it actually wasn't even correct for you to say yes. So contentment in waiting for the right invitations, not being afraid to say no to the wrong ones, being clear about the scope of an invitation. It's like reading the fine print, informed consent, know what you're getting yourself into. So maybe that manifestor is inviting you to have a conversation. And if you're in the space of being able to just appreciate that that was the invitation, great. But if you have expectations that just because that person is talking to you, that it means this and that and the other thing, that can get you in trouble. At the same time, wanting this and that and the other thing is also not wrong. But if that manifestor can't invite you in that way, then that's something that you need to consider. Maybe you need to start saying no to things that you have been saying yes to that have been leaving you feeling bitter. Last but not least, when involved with manifestors in your life, learning to keep them informed. So informing them about things rather than asking questions so that they can have the freedom of movement to do whatever it is that they need to do on their own time and in their own way. So anyways, those are just a few things that I really wanted to talk about. Surely there are other angles and other things that we did not cover, but I do hope that if you stuck around and you checked it out, this was valuable to you. And of course, you can go back, rewatch, rewind, contemplate, put things into practice in your own life and see how it works for you. So yeah, just thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm not huge on social media, but I do have a website and I do have a professional Facebook page. So you can find me online on the web at melaniehalpert.com, or you can always reach me on Facebook at facebook.com/MelanieHalpertCBP. And here on my YouTube channel, the other thing that I published recently was it was an intro class, because I am facilitating Living Your Design now. And it was a free intro class that I did, which is available to everyone and anyone. You're all welcome to check it out. And I do plan on having Living Your Design happening every once in a while. I just finished a couple classes this week, and I hope to be starting maybe a couple classes in July and in the fall. So if this resonated with you, if you want to get in touch, whether it be to ask any questions or if you're curious to know about working with me in any capacity, I'd love to hear from you. So for whatever it's worth, take this, run with it, keep what resonates, leave the rest. It's been a pleasure. Take care and see you next time.